I've been arrested about 8 times, both by the Israeli military government and by the Palestinian Authority, for my human rights work and advocacy. For people who don't know the situation in Palestine, well, there are segregated roads, roads that can only be used by the Israeli settlers and roads that Palestinians use. And this means that for us to travel even short distances, we have to go through checkpoints and the wall and other difficult circumstances. So what we did was we essentially went on the buses that were for settlers only and tried to enter Jerusalem as Palestinians. And we were, of course, pulled out of the buses, beaten, interrogated by the Israeli soldiers. And that's just one story of my arrests. For the Palestinian Authority, the last time they arrested me, believe it or not, was because I was carrying Palestinian flags. And sadly, it's because the Palestinian Authority at that time was trying to shut down protests against the assassination of Nizar Banat, who was an outspoken Palestinian social media figure and activist. And we were at the protest. I was carrying flags to hand out to the protesters, and I was arrested for 2 days by the Palestinian Authority. It's unfortunate to see across the Gulf right now this effort to ignore the Palestinian struggle, ignore the basic kind of values of freedom and dignity that the Palestinians deserve, to deepen relationships with Israel. What we've seen with Egypt, what we've seen with Jordan, who historically normalized relations with Israel, is that they paid a price. Jordanians' access to water has deteriorated, Jordanian rights have deteriorated. The same thing with the Egyptian economy based on the Camp David Accords. So in the long term, this type of deepening of relations actually leads to worse circumstances for the peoples and nations that normalize, and actually push us towards a future of the Middle East that's not built on the values that we care about and the life of prosperity that people deserve, but is one based on the abuse of people's rights. I was a child in the second Intifada that happened in Palestine. But one thing I will never forget is when I was watching television under curfew, hiding under the stairs of our home, and I was watching Qataris and Saudis and Emiratis literally getting on TV and taking off of, including mothers, some of our mothers and grandmothers, taking off the gold and handing their gold to donate it to the Palestinian struggle. And the reason I say this story is I believe that the sense of solidarity and love that exists between the Qatari people and the Palestinian people, and between the people of the Gulf more generally and the Palestinian people, is deeper than the superficial relations that are being forced with Israel. Now, I think what we need to figure out is how do we take those deep relationships of brotherhood and sisterhood and turn them into action. And what I would start with, the first and most important step, is I believe that the Qatari people and the Qatari government should begin to push towards sanctioning Israel, towards boycotting and divesting from Israeli companies, and to push that globally. Right now, Qatar can be a leader in the effort of, just as we're seeing with Ukraine and Russia, where Russia is being sanctioned, where Russian banks are being banned from the financial system, where Russian athletes are being pushed out. I would say that it's more important to focus here on how Qatar can achieve that for the Palestinian cause, how we can push that on a global scale. And I would tell the people here in Qatar that I think what's very important on their part is, first of all, to increase their awareness, and this is why it's excellent that you have Qatari news stations speaking about this, increase their awareness of the Palestinian cause. And then the second step they can take is to push, for their universities, to push for different businesses that operate here to ensure that they do not cooperate in any way with Israel's oppression of the Palestinian people. Those who are oppressing us across the world are working together. So the Israeli military trains the American police, and the American police targets African Americans with the same tactics. The US government funds Israel. Surveillance technology by Israel is sold to, for example, the Myanmar government and other governments that have harmed the Rohingya and other communities. This is all to say that If those who are seeking to oppress us are working together to silence us, then it's on us to work in an intersectional and united way all across the world, from Kashmir all the way to Latin America and from Palestine all the way to South Africa, to unite in pushing back against these forces and to build a struggle that is founded on the values of freedom, justice, and dignity for all, and then to work on building power.